history is filled with stories of people who died fighting. Kings died on battlefields. Generals died defending their kingdoms. But sometimes, a person's final battle is fought without a sword. In the spring and autumn period of ancient China, a fire broke out inside the palace of the state of Song. The flames spread quickly. People shouted for help. Servants rushed through the palace, trying to save those trapped inside. And then they reached one woman. She was not an ordinary woman. She was a princess of the state of Lu, the wife of a former ruler of Song, and a woman who had spent her entire life surrounded by the strict rules of aristocratic society. Her name was Bo Ji, and when the fire came, she refused to leave. Why? To understand that decision, we have to go back more than half a century. Bo Ji was born into the ruling family of Lu, one of the powerful states of the spring and autumn period. She was the daughter of Duke Xian of Lu and the sister of Duke Cheng of Lu. Like many aristocratic women of her time, her marriage was not simply a matter of love. Marriage was politics. It connected ruling families. It strengthened alliances, and it was governed by elaborate rituals. Bo Ji was eventually married to Duke Gong of Song. But according to later accounts, the marriage did not begin smoothly. There was an important problem. The ruler of Song did not personally come to welcome his bride in the traditional manner. For an ordinary person, this might have seemed like a small insult. For an aristocratic woman living in a world governed by ritual, it was anything but small. The proper ritual demonstrated respect. To ignore it was to challenge the woman's status and the relationship between the two ruling families. Bo Ji was reportedly angry, yet eventually, the marriage went ahead. She became the wife of the ruler of Song, and for years, she lived within the palace of another state. Eventually, her husband died. Their son became the ruler of Song, and Bo Ji remained in the palace. She had survived the death of her husband. She had survived the changing political world around her. But years later, something far more terrifying was waiting for her. Fire. The year was 543 BC. Bo Ji was no longer a young bride. She was an older woman who had lived for decades in the state of Song. Then, one night, a fire broke out in the palace. The ancient sources describe the disaster very briefly. The fire spread. The people around Bo Ji urged her to escape, but she refused. Why? The answer is connected to one of the most important concepts in the society she lived in: ritual propriety. The ancient Chinese word li is often translated simply as ritual, but li meant much more than ceremonies. It governed behavior. It defined relationships. It told people what was considered proper and what was considered shameful. And for aristocratic women, these rules could be especially strict. According to the Guliang Commentary, the people around Bo Ji told her to leave the building and escape the flames. But Bo Ji answered that a woman should not leave her inner quarters at night without her attendants. She was waiting for the women whose duty it was to accompany and protect her. The fire continued to spread. The people urged her again, but Bo Ji still refused. The flames were getting closer, and yet she remained inside. The traditional account preserves a line attributed to Bo Ji: "To abandon ritual in order to preserve my life is worse than dying while keeping it." It is one of the most haunting statements associated with a woman in ancient Chinese history. But we need to be careful here. We cannot know exactly what Bo Ji said that night. The event happened more than 2,000 years ago. The detailed dialogue was recorded in later transmitted texts, so historians should not necessarily treat every word as a literal transcript. What we can say with much greater confidence is that ancient sources remembered her death as an example of strict adherence to ritual. And that tells us something extremely important. The story is not simply about a woman trapped in a fire. It is about the society that produced the story. To the people who recorded it, Bo Ji's decision represented something admirable. She refused to violate the rules expected of a woman of her status. She would rather die than be seen as having abandoned those rules. And so she waited. Eventually, there was no escape. The flames reached her. Bo Ji died in the fire. She was not killed by an enemy army. She was not executed by a king. She was not struck down in battle. She died because she refused to leave the palace under circumstances that she believed violated the rules governing her conduct. And that is what made her death so memorable. The Zuo Zhuan, one of the most important historical works concerning the spring and autumn period, recorded her death. The Guliang Commentary gave a more detailed account of her behavior. Later, Lu Xiang included her in the biographies of exemplary women, presenting her as a model of female virtue. Over the centuries, her story became part of a much larger tradition. Bo Ji was remembered not simply as a woman who died in a fire, but as a woman who chose what her society considered honor over survival. And here is where the story becomes much more complicated. Modern audiences may naturally ask, why didn't she simply run? Why should a rule about proper behavior matter more than her life? Was she courageous? Was she foolish? Was she a victim of an oppressive social system? Or was she exercising her own agency according to values she genuinely believed in? There is no simple answer. From a modern perspective, allowing yourself to die in a fire because an attendant has not arrived can seem incomprehensible. But ancient societies did not always define individual freedom in the same way we do today. A person's identity was deeply connected to family, to rank, to gender, to social obligations, and to ritual. For someone like Bo Ji, breaking those rules was not necessarily a minor personal decision. It could mean violating the very structure of society that defined her place in the world. That does not mean we have to agree with her decision. But if we want to understand her, we have to understand the world in which that decision made sense. One particularly interesting detail appears in the Zuo Zhuan. After Bo Ji's death, the text contains a striking judgment about her. It describes her in terms that have been interpreted as saying that she behaved according to the expectations of a woman rather than those of a wife. This reflects a larger question in ancient Chinese thought. What exactly were the obligations of a woman, and what did it mean to fulfill them? For later generations, Bo Ji became an example of female virtue. But today, her story can also be read in another way. It shows just how powerful social expectations could become. A rule designed to preserve order and propriety could become so absolute that a human life was placed beneath it. That tension is what makes Bo Ji's story so fascinating. Bo Ji's death did not disappear into history. It became a political and moral event. The disaster at Song attracted attention from other states. According to the historical tradition, the rulers and ministers of the period gathered at a place called Chanyuan in connection with the disaster and discussed assistance for Song. Her death therefore became more than a private tragedy. It became part of the political and moral memory of the spring and autumn period. And later writers continued to preserve her story. For centuries, scholars praised her determination. Women were told about her example. Her name became associated with chastity, ritual, and unwavering adherence to duty. But history changes as the people reading it change. The same story can carry a completely different meaning in different centuries. To one generation, Bo Ji was a heroine. To another, she might appear to be a tragic victim. To us, she may represent both. Perhaps that is the most interesting question. Was Bo Ji a woman who bravely defended her principles? Or was she a woman whose society taught her that survival itself was less important than obedience? The answer may not be either one. She may have been a person making a decision inside a system of values that was very different from our own. She believed that certain boundaries mattered. She believed that her position carried obligations. And when faced with the ultimate test, she followed those beliefs to their most extreme conclusion. That is what makes the story unsettling. It is not simply a story about death. It is a story about what happens when social values become stronger than the instinct to survive. Imagine that night in the Palace of Song. The flames are rising. Smoke fills the halls. Servants are shouting. People are running toward safety. And somewhere inside the burning palace stands an elderly woman. She knows the fire is coming. She knows there may still be a way out. But she does not take it. The historical record gives us only fragments. We do not know her private thoughts. We cannot hear her final words. We cannot know whether she felt fear. But we do know how later generations remembered her. As Bo Ji, the woman who stayed. The woman who placed ritual above survival. And the woman whose death became one of the most haunting stories of the spring and autumn period. Perhaps we should not simply ask whether she was right or wrong. Perhaps the better question is this. What kind of society makes a person believe that dying with honor is better than living without it? And perhaps that is why, more than 2,000 years later, we still remember the woman who died in the fire. Her name was Bo Ji, and her story is a reminder that sometimes, the most revealing stories in history are not about the people who conquered kingdoms, but about the people who were willing to die for what their world taught them to believe.